Welcome to Shallow. Join us as we explore the topics that are always on our minds. From beauty and wellness trends to balancing our careers and ambitions, these conversations fill our WhatsApp inboxes and social media feeds. We're diving into pop culture and asking the question, is it really that deep?
On this episode of Shallow, we're talking about hair loss, something many people experience but isn't always spoken about openly. From the different types of hair loss that affect both men and women to the emotional and financial strain of treatments, we're exploring how hair loss goes beyond surface level. Lucy shares her personal journey with alopecia, and we discuss the impact of this condition, the myths and remedies, and the challenges of finding effective care, whether through NHS or private healthcare. Let's dive in. Lucy Bell, how have you been this week?
Still in Australia, surprise, surprise.
Still loving it.
Still loving it. I think one of the most important things that I found in this week is that I love this place because of how many swim spots there are. You know, a lot of people in the UK, you just go out for a pint or, you know, you're going down the street to meet a friend in a cafe. Whereas here it's like, let's meet at the local, you know, dive. No, I'm joking.
Dive bar.
Let's meet at the local like swim spot. And like there's one of these pools nearby. It's like in the harbour. It's really lovely. And yeah, it's just really nice to kind of like unwind there, like go and read a book in the middle of the day. And I feel like if you were kind of working from home in a place like this, you know, it's really nice to have that and to have somewhere that you can kind of go and just chill and, you know, swim about. And also, you know, for me, kind of leading into this episode, like, you know, swimming in the sea has a real benefit for hair loss, which is what this kind of episode is going to be about.
Yes, this has been such a fun week of swimming, and I do think it's very, Aussie to just like pop out for a nice swim on your lunch break or after work or something, and it's definitely been something that's been really good for my mental health and well-being, so I'm glad you're loving it too. But yeah, we should get in to the episode.
Yeah, so I mean, this topic is something that's pretty close to home for me and, you know, for a lot of women across the globe. It's hair loss. Today's episode, we will be primarily focusing on female hair loss because it's what I know about, but I do appreciate that this is something that affects a lot of men as well. I'm going to dive into kind of my own personal experience, but, you know, I just think it's good to kind of say that, you know, the shallow take of hair loss is that for a lot of people it is not life-threatening or serious. You know, people will say, you know, it's cosmetic and you're probably at the bottom of the list for treatment because of that. But yeah, you know, a lot of things come into this, you know, especially for hair loss, the cost of treatment, the emotional toll it takes, and, you know, the burden that you have to kind of carry around is something that I have to deal with every day, and a lot of people do have to deal with every day. I
know also for you it is that daily toll. It's a daily grind for you. You're conscious of it, you're aware of it, and you do think about it a lot. And I think you touched on it already. It's seen as such a superficial, almost vanity metric when it comes to skin conditions and hair loss, etc. But it can really take an emotional toll. Just to start with your kind of personal journey, when did you first notice hair loss? When did it become a part of your kind of everyday life?
I mean, starting from when I was a teenager, I always had quite nice hair. Like, it was quite, you know, I have very fine hair, but I've always been told I have quite a lot of it. And, you know, I've always been a little bit self-conscious of my hair, but I don't think it's been in a way of like, oh, it's thin or whatever. I think it's just been in the kind of normal teenage self, oh, I want it to be a bit more blonde or like, you know, like less this or less wavy and more straight, and, you know,
like style.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd always be like curling my hair and like, you know, changing it, and you kind of generally do that. So I deal with a condition called alopecia areata, and this is something that I got a few years ago now. I think it was maybe 2022. So basically what alopecia areata is a small patch of a coin-sized piece of hair loss, and it's usually presents in a very circular, almost perfect circle, like a 2p coin. Wow. And the hair completely is gone. So it's not just like, you know, it's kind of shedding a little bit. It's like you will maybe go in the shower or you'll be swimming and you'll come out and you'll brush your hair, and, you know, you'll suddenly realize that there's this piece of hair loss. And I was actually having a shower one day, you know, between work or whatever, and I was kind of drying my hair, and I kind of ran my hands through my hair like you usually do, and I was like, wait a second, like,
something's wrong.
Why does that feel bald right now? And yeah, it was really, really probably one of the worst feelings I've ever had. You know, that just kind of like pit in your stomach. You don't know what it is. It's kind of one of those things where you're not accustomed with this. This is not something that you've ever dealt with before. I mean, I dealt with scalp psoriasis when I was a kid. That's not something that I kind of took into adulthood. So I didn't have that kind of emotional toll that I think comes with early adolescence, and I think I would have really struggled with that. So I think, you know, I was maybe like 25, 26 when this happened, and I, you know, it was just the absolute dread. You know, my instant thought was, I'm going to lose all my hair, like what am I going to do? And you kind of catastrophize that. You don't know anything about it. You want to speak to a doctor immediately. You're like, what the fuck is this? You're Google diagnosing yourself, which is, please don't. If you ever suffer with hair loss, like, Google diagnoses are not great.
Don't do Dr. Google.
Don't do Dr. Google. But I will go into more of that because, you know, the healthcare system in a way is a little bit rubbish, and you know, maybe I did have to resort to a few online remedies myself. But yeah, that was really concerning, and I think I got an emergency doctor's appointment, and, you know, obviously just completely traumatized by the whole experience. And, you know, her telling, you know, the words alopecia, I think for me now, sitting here, I'm a little bit calmer with saying those words. I think for somebody who doesn't deal with hair loss like that, and saying the words alopecia, you think of, you know, complete and total hair loss, right? You think of your eyebrows going, your entire hair going, all your body hair. But actually alopecia is in different forms, and there is different stages and different types, some genetic, some environmental, and some immune related. Mine is an immune disorder. So basically what happens is your immune system is tricked into thinking that your hair follicles are the bad guy, and basically tell them to fall the fuck out. And, you know,
you get out of here.
Get the fuck out. Like, and for me, I'm just like, but why though?
Yeah, like why?
Can you fucking not? Like, that's so bizarre. Like, and it's a really... They don't know much about it other than the fact that it is immune related. Your white blood cells are responding in a bad way. They're doing something they're not supposed to be. A lot of people think that it might be related to your gut. So a lot of people with alopecia, it's been found that they have different gut bacteria to somebody who doesn't have alopecia.
It's interesting.
And that can really affect everything. I mean, your gut is your second brain. And I've, you know, come to learn that taking probiotics does help my condition, does help me.
I want to get to kind of things that have assisted you, or that have helped kind of the condition you're dealing with. But quickly, so you're 25, 26 at this point. You found this kind of patch of hair that's missing. Obviously, panic stations, like, am I about to lose all my hair? Obviously, I can't imagine that put you in the best place, you know, probably feeling incredibly anxious at that time. You went into the doctor's surgery about it. You got that emergency appointment. Off the bat, did they know what it was straight away, or was there a bit of kind of investigation that had to happen before you found out that it was alopecia areata?
So in hindsight, I wish there had been a bit more of an investigation. I think, you know, alopecia areata is so obvious, you know, because it is just a patch of hair loss, that when I went in, they were instantly like, this is alopecia areata. This is.
So straight away, they were like, this is it.
Yeah, they didn't take any samples. They didn't send anything off to any labs because it just seemed very obvious. And the instant course of action for this, because it is incurable, by the way, this is not something that there is any treatment for. I think in America, they're trying to get something FDA approved. So they have found a cure basically that has worked with, I think, animals.
Okay.
And so it has actually, fixed the condition. But obviously that's not in humans yet, and
it's a long way off from being able to.
It's a long way off, and, you know, I really hope that comes to a head very soon, and we can get that, you know, across the globe. But yeah, there's nothing that treats it. So the first point of action is steroid cream. So similar to kind of somebody with eczema who's coming in with it for the first time, as you well know, you know, you will be given kind of a 1%, 2% hydrocortisone cream or oil or ointment.
Dishing out hair
and
oil.
This was kind of a thing of like, use this twice a day. The hair will probably grow back within 6 months to a year.
Okay.
That was the basis of the information I got.
And did that happen?
No. So what did happen was I did start to get hair growth quite quickly. You know, it started to grow back, but the patch of hair loss did migrate, so it did get slightly wider, and a lot of information from doctors and online is that it's quite an unpredictable disease. It can spread, it can stop, it can just get to that small size and grow back within 6 months, and you'll never have a bout of it again. You know, one of my really good friends, her mum actually suffers with it, and I hope she doesn't mind me talking about this, but her, you know, when I was first going through this, you know, it was a really nice anecdote from a friend that told me, you know, my mum suffered with this 10 years ago. You know, she was dealing with something quite horrible at the time, and she got 2 patches of hair loss on the back of her head, and she hadn't actually had another occurrence for 10 years. Like, she'd been 10 years without having a bout of it. So that was kind of like a little glimmer of hope. It is something that the doctors do tell you. They say, you know, you might not get it, but we can't guarantee. We don't know.
Okay, so you start using the steroid cream and it does start growing back for a bit?
Yeah, so it does grow back. So what I figured out with how my alopecia works is it starts in a circular way. So you get this circular patch of complete hair loss. In almost like a ring of hair begins to grow back within the middle, and then it does slightly get worse.
Okay.
Before then completely filling in.
Okay.
So that the panic comes from it getting worse and becoming a lot bigger than it was at the start, and that's when the panic sets in, where you're like, oh my god, is this just going to keep going and going and going? And I think I was, you know, I will say the emotional toll of that was a lot, and I felt a little bit like I didn't really know what to do, because, you know, online they'll tell you to use, you know, we'll go into these kind of treatments later, but they'll tell you to use X, they'll tell you to use Y, and, you know, they'll be like, this has helped me, and you'll go on like forums and they're like, this didn't help me, and I lost all my hair, and like, this is not a good thing for you to listen to.
I had so much of that, especially when I was kind of investigating my eczema and allergies and stuff. What works for one will not work for the other. What is heralded as a miracle cure for one girl will be someone else's nightmare. At this point, you've obviously tried the steroid cream, it worked, and then it didn't work. It was a bit...
It's not a cure, it's just a treatment.
It's a kind of bandage to slap on. Is that when you started then turning to Dr. Google and to Dr. TikTok for kind of some help?
Yeah. So when, you know, my friend who said her mum kind of went through this condition, so she actually, very in the early stages of me getting this condition, told me that her mum went and instantly got steroid injections. So one of the baseline treatments is a steroid injection, which the NHS are supposed to offer, but they don't offer anymore, and this was not given to me as an option. They told me that the steroid cream would probably be enough. It wasn't, and she, you know, my friend said, go and get these steroid injections, and I kind of put it off for a while, because I was kind of like, this wasn't kind of told to me by my practitioner. I'm gonna wait, see if it helps. It didn't. I kind of got another patch slightly next to it, and then that's when the panic sets in. I go on Google, I find a private clinic. And that was, you know, I felt the most calm when I went and saw that clinician, because I felt like I was in a place where they deal with hair loss all the time. They, you know, assessed my patch. Some of it had grown back, some of it hadn't. I was still dealing with active alopecia areata, basically. And it was, you know, I kind of broke down in that like doctor's office and was like, I feel helpless. I feel like nobody's helping me here. Nobody's giving me a straight answer. I don't know how to fix this. I'm a person that's used to being very in control, and this is something that I could not control and I could not manage. And, you know, I'm a person that if I have a problem, I will fix it, or I will do everything in my power to fix it. This is something about me that I do like. But when it comes to something like this, which is completely out of your control, for somebody to tell you there is nothing that you can do about it except from these like treatments every, you know, few weeks, and you will see how it is. You know, I wanted somebody to give me that pill that was going to stop it, but that does not exist, unfortunately. So therefore, I've had to go to other means.
I think this is a really good time to chat about hair loss remedies, like kind of myths, I guess. Obviously, we mentioned that you kind of had to take to your own research because there isn't this magical pill, and maybe you were getting a bit stonewalled by doctors, you weren't getting offered the things that you needed to get offered, or maybe that thing that you need just doesn't exist yet. So you went online to have a look at some remedies. From my point of view, recently I've been getting served a lot of trichology TikTok, a lot of hair care TikToks, more so than I ever have done before. And the one that really broke through was rosemary oil, right? Yeah. Did you dabble?
I think before I went and got the steroid injections, rosemary oil was like the number one thing that I was trying. So basically with the treatments, I don't have the time or the resources to see which hair loss remedy is going to help my situation.
To go like one by one for 6 months. And,
exactly, which is when you would realise, because hair is, you know, on a good day anyway, hair takes a long time to grow, right? It grows like an inch a month or something, you know, on average. So for somebody trying to regrow their hair from scratch, you're kind of like, oh, I want to do this as quickly as possible and I will try anything and everything. So I did try rosemary oil. Something else that I've tried is a microneedle roller. So
yes, I've heard about
stimulates
these.
The blood circulation in your hair. You can actually use it if you don't have bouts of hair loss. It might help with your hairline. It might help just like promote healthy growth. It's really good for you. Kind of roll it over the area of concern for like 2 minutes, quite a lot of pressure actually, and you know it becomes red and a little bit, you know, inflamed, but that's the good thing. You're bringing the blood circulation, you're getting those follicles, you know, activated.
So it's supposed to kind of stimulate the hair growth, essentially, the hair follicle.
Of course. It's supposed to take it into that growing phase of the follicle.
So with the hair microneedle rollers, you have to keep them very clean and sterile, right? Because essentially they create a bit of an incision and
Basically, and it will feel a little bit tingly. It'll feel a bit warm. It might be even a little bit of pain at the site of the treatment. But I will post a link of how to use microneedling below. But yeah, I've tried and tested a lot of different hair loss remedies, and you know, I think it's a good segue to kind of say, you know, approximately 1 person in 50 will suffer from alopecia areata at some point in their life. And this is something that I was a little bit shocked at. So when I first developed this condition, I was like, oh my God, this is so rare. Like, how can I have got this condition that is so completely rare? I've never heard of it before. You know, it can develop at any age, but a lot of people develop it before the age of 30, which obviously in my case makes sense. But yeah, it was quite, you know, when I spoke to a doctor for the first time, they kind of told me, you know, this is quite a lot more common than you would once think. And funnily enough, quite coincidentally, around 2 months later, my neighbour and friend, she actually developed a patch herself, which was completely bizarre because I'd never really looked into this condition at all. I'd never really heard about it, and like out of the blue there she was with one as well.
She gets it.
So yeah, that was kind of a bit of a shock.
So I'd never actually heard of alopecia areata before you were diagnosed with it, and I find it really interesting that you can develop it at any age, at any stage in your life. Is there any known triggers or aggressors of alopecia areata, or is it just your body just decides one day it doesn't like its own hair follicles?
So researchers really don't completely understand why the immune system attacks the hair follicles. A lot of practitioners that you will speak to about this, you know, they have to kind of be like, we don't know why this happens, blah, 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 blah. But one of the things that they think may go towards somebody developing it is stress. And stress obviously plays a large part in your immune system. It can affect your skin, it can affect, you know, everything about you basically. So it doesn't surprise me that could be a factor. I mean, when I developed it, I was, you know, working in a new industry. I work in film and TV, and you know, I was trying to make my way in that industry. It was a little bit stressful, but I think there are other points in my life where I've been more stressed. There has been situations in my life that have happened where I felt like it was a lot worse than that time. So for me, okay, maybe I was a little bit stressed, but I think the most irritating part about this is, why can't I go through a little bit of stress? Why does my body have to attack my hair?
I mean, we talk about this all the time. We seem to be the most sensitive girls under the sun. Like, we cannot have a margarita without our skin flaring up, or
you know, wearing sun cream on your face and being like, oh, it's tingling, and it's supposed to be a sensitive skincare,
and getting a rash, and then
getting a rash with Phoebe and Lucy.
And then the tiniest bit of stress and clumps of hair falling out. Story of our lives.
For our amazing
personalities. But again, I don't want to kind of, obviously I know you're still going through it, you're still managing your condition. How are you finding it emotionally now? Are you finding it easier? Are you still the same level of anxiousness that you were when you found that first patch? Like where are you sitting on that scale now?
So what happened basically is the initial patch grew back. It completely grew back actually. And the reason that I love being in Australia and I love being in warm countries is because I correlate that healing with being in the sea and being in the sun when I was visiting the Philippines for a month. And I came back from that trip and it had completely healed and I felt like I was back to normal again.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what a relief that felt like. It was like a weight had been taken off. I'd taken off a rucksack full of like metal,
stones, yeah.
And I felt like, okay, that was a blip in my life. I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
Flash forward to around June of this year, which is 2024 when we're filming this. I, was working in Scotland and it was the same kind of thing. I just got out of the shower, I'd done my hair. And usually it's when I've like kind of done my hair and I've not really realised when it's either got worse or I've figured out there's a new patch. And I found a small coin-shaped patch of hair
Same
loss.
thing.
Right next to where the old patch was. And I'm very lucky, here, I'll say it, I'm very lucky in the sense that it's always been underneath my hair. I have always had this kind of fear that I will get a patch at the front of my hairline, on top of my hairline, in my parting. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know how I would deal with that. That's the honest truth. Whereas this one, again, it was the similar kind of patch size. My workplace were actually super kind and they actually flew me back to London and to get a steroid injection because the thing that I didn't do with the first patch was I didn't inject it straight away.
Yeah, you gave it time.
Exactly. And my thoughts on the matter were, if I inject it straight away, this is not going to get worse.
Stop it in its
Unfortunately
tracks.
for me, that's not what happened. I think what the steroid injection has done for me is it grows the hair back a lot quicker than it would have done if it was just on its own. I don't think it stops the reaction. So I think my immune system stays active within that patch of hair, for months afterwards, and then eventually will fill in and grow back. I'm currently going through that stage at the moment where it has got a lot bigger, but it is, most of it, I would say 75% of it is growing back and is about a centimetre at the moment. But I do have slight bits that are still without hair loss, but the problem with alopecia is that each hair follicle is on their own timeline. And it's the same with anyone. Everyone's hair follicles are on a different timeline. That's why sometimes you have thin bits of hair at the front, thicker bits at the back. It's the same for everyone. So, those are on the same timeline. Some parts of the hair loss were lost at different times.
So the steroid injections are helping. Obviously, they're not this cure-all that we would love. You mentioned at the start of the episode that you take a prebiotic. Is there anything else that you do day-to-day lifestyle, product management that assists hair growth or that makes you feel better?
So yeah, I think it's that thing of like makes you feel better, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to sit on this podcast and be like, try this, it will fix it, because I have done that too many times. I've got my hopes up too many times.
Spent too much money. You
kind of go online, you're like, oh, well, this is going to be it. Because I'm I'm a very optimistic, very hopeful person. And I think this is what this condition says to me is that it kind of drags that down and it drags that out of me, which is actually very sad to think about. But like, I try to keep optimistic. Every time I'm like, okay, I found this new thing, for example, red light laser therapy. It's actually, there's a lot of research that it does help hair loss. It's mainly, the research has been done around androgenic alopecia, which is genetic hair loss. And that happens usually on the top of your scalp. And it kind of migrates away from the hairline. And that's the research that it's helped with, but it is also helped people with my condition as well. But yeah, it's that kind of like, don't take my optimism away from me, because that's kind of who I am as a person. And my constant kind of worry is that if it gets worse, I will just begin to feel a little less optimistic about it potentially getting better in the future. But I can sit here and say that, but I can't let that actually get to me, because otherwise I wouldn't get anything done. I have to look at it from the point of, at the moment, I know where it's at. I can,
we can manage it.
We can manage it. I'm taking photos. I'll see where it goes. It's doing the exact same thing as the other patch. So I'm hoping that it follows the same patterns. And yeah, I think this is a good way to kind of mention the statistic, you know, that over 70% of people with alopecia areata do experience kind of anxiety and depression. And I can second that, you know. I know I'll keep hamming it in, but I am quite a positive person. I do like to think of myself as somebody who's full of life, but I've never felt so down than that year when I was dealing with the initial patch, where I did feel pretty hopeless, pretty down, like nothing was ever going to fix it. And when it did heal itself, there was that kind of glimmer of hope of, okay, you know, if that can happen once, it can happen again. Okay, it's really shit that it's happened twice, but I can get through this. I can do it. Nobody's noticing it. This is another thing, you know. I think you can second this as I'm like, does my hair look thin, or do I you know, you kind of get anxious about it. You're like, oh my God, are people noticing that I don't have as much hair on this side of my head, or blah, 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 blah. And a lot of the time people are like, I have not noticed it at all.
No idea.
And when I do show them, they're like a little bit shocked. They're like, I can't believe that's actually there in on your head.
Yeah,
and
you'd never know.
Yeah, I think for me it is, I will try everything. I will try the red laser hat, which, by the way, if you are suffering with just general, like telogen effluent, which is just general hair loss, it's supposed to be really good for that. It's supposed to really stimulate your hair growth and create kind of thicker hair strands. You know, steroid injections are a little bit more extreme. I would get, you know, a second opinion on whether to get those. Rosemary oil. So rosemary oil I do use, but I use it in conjunction with, it's kind of like a mixed oil. You're never supposed to use it on its own. You're supposed to use it with kind of like a castor oil to kind of dilute it. It's very strong, so you can't just put it straight on your scalp. But there is a study with rosemary oil. They basically took 100 participants and they used 2% of minoxidil and rosemary oil on half of the patients, half on the other. And there was an increased hair count after 6 months for both sides, and there was no difference in the hair increase. It was both the same. So I think that speaks quite a lot of volume.
I've seen so much about rosemary oil online. It obviously really blew up on TikTok, didn't it? I've seen some dermatologists say it's about as useful as a chocolate teapot. I've seen other people say, actually, no, this really helped me. Obviously, you've looked at some studies. There seems to be some compelling evidence there. Did you say that it helped your condition, or you didn't use it for long enough to really notice the difference?
I still use it now.
Okay.
So I do regularly oil my hair.
Yeah.
So like I could be better with it, you know, like anything, but it's one of the add-ons that I do. So yeah, I'll oil my hair, I'll use my red light therapy hat, I'll get my steroid injections, I'll microneedle it,
So
I'll take hair vitamins, I'll take probiotics, you know, and actually on a path at the moment with the clinician that I saw not too long ago, that, you know, there might be something bacterial going on. So, you know, I'm trying a course of antibiotics. So it's kind of like you hit, if you, in my head, if you hit it with everything, let's hope one's going to work. It's kind of similar with skin, right? You try all these kind of different products and you hope one will work.
It's incredibly difficult to try something in isolation because you're always going to be drawn towards, oh, what if this is the one? What if this is the one? Because I think I'll go back to briefly what you said about hope. It's like, you know, you do look online or someone does recommend something and you're like, oh, maybe this is going to be the one. But to give it the isolated time it needs to figure out whether that is the one thing that works for you is incredibly hard and it's incredibly testing. But I think to go back to also what you said about your like emotional state during that time, obviously we were having similar situations that kind of mirrored one another that year, and you are everything that you said that you are full of energy, you're full of life, you're like such a Duracell bunny, you're very sunshiny as a person, and as a friend, seeing the effect this had on you, it was a stark difference to the person I know you to be. And I think it's really important that this stuff is taken seriously because it really does affect people and it affects people's psyches and it affects their mental well-being. Just to kind of wrap this up, obviously we know this is that deep, it's not a question. Where are you now, and could you pass on any pearls of wisdom if someone's going through the same thing?
So I think one emotion that really stands out for me is grief. And I think you could probably second this. And it's the grief of when you're walking around and you're looking at somebody and you think they have amazing hair or amazing skin, and you're kind of thinking about your own loss, and hair loss is loss in a way. Like for a woman, your hair is very, very important. It is something that is a part of you, and it shapes who you are. You get it styled. It's that whole like, you know, holistic thing of going and get your hair cut and like getting bleached, put in it and dye, or, you know, having different styles, and you're kind of feeling in yourself that you can't do those things and you're missing out on those things because, you know, it might potentially make it worse, or you might not have those things in the future. You know, you get those horrible like worries. And the advice that I would give is kind of let that grief wash over you, like feel those things because they are valid, and it is valid to feel down about losing hair. Like that it's not completely normal to be, it's not a normal thing for your immune system to be attacking your hair, and especially if you have it in a spot where you can see it. Like you've got to deal with maybe somebody looking at you differently, or thinking that you have an illness that you don't have, or thinking that there's something wrong with you, whereas, you know, you want to be known for who you are as a person, and, you know, your hair is such a big part of that. And it's not just, you know, you can be like, oh, I have such a great personality though, and you're fine, like you don't need your hair, like you'd look amazing. This is what I you know, friends have told me, like even if you did lose all your hair, you look amazing. Like in a way it's helpful, but at the same time it's like you don't really want to hear that. Like, you want to be, you're so good, you've got such a good personality, nobody wants to hear
10 out of 10 still smash it with no hair. But I do know what you mean. Like one thing I would continue to tell myself when I was really struggling with my allergies was, you know, the way you look is the least interesting thing about you. People don't hang out with you for the way you look, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to feel like you look like shit. So yeah, I totally agree with that. So I think your overarching message is
don't give up speaking to people as well. Even if a doctor says there's nothing that they can do, please keep speaking to different clinicians, keep going to a different dermatologist, try other things. If anything, it's just going to give you a little bit of clarity on the fact that you're doing something about it. I think that was the thing that affected me the most, was that I felt like it was out of my control, and that I didn't know anything about it, and I wanted to know more about it, and that gave me a little bit of calmness, knowing that I was doing something about it. At the same time though, obsessing over it and thinking about it every single day is going to be part and parcel of that, but you're going to have to really just try and separate yourself from it in a way. I think this is what I've tried to do with mine is, you know, maybe it has got a little bit bigger and I will spiral after that, but I'll give myself 2 days to spiral about it, and then I have to move on, and I have to get on with my life, because I would just sit in my room and not go out and not socialise and not see friends. You know, sometimes it is difficult in those times where it has got worse, or I found a new patch, to go outside, to socialise. I feel like nobody kind of understands that, and I feel like you're sat here and you do, and that's really nice. But, you know, if you've got a wedding to go to, if you've got drinks to go out to, and you're not feeling very confident about your hair, you don't want to do anything.
I get that. It really felt like my social life was taken away from me during the time I was struggling as well. But thank you so much for sharing your story on this, Luce. I know it's emotional and it's real, and I think it's really, really brave, and hopefully it's helped other people listening.
Yeah, and please, like, if you have gone through something similar or a different type of hair loss, you know, please get in touch, because I'd be very much happy to speak to you about it. It's always nice to speak to somebody who's in a similar boat, because it can feel very lonely and isolating.
And now's the time for...
What a pile of bollocks!
This is the time in the show where we just chat about something insignificant that just really fucks us off and grinds our gears. And it's Phoebe's turn this week, and what do you have for us today?
I have another Instagram-based one.
Go on.
People who put homeowner in their Instagram bio. Like, look, firstly, buying a home in this day and age is no small feat, okay? Shit is expensive.
Get that on a collar.
Yeah. That being said, I don't need to click on your Instagram and see it staring me in the face, telling me how povo I am because I can't afford to buy a house.
Do you think it's also linked to those, you know, when they like put like homeowner and then they'll have like a link to an Instagram account that's just for their new house?
Yeah, just for the build, and then it'll probably be like homeowner dog mom, and then they've got an Instagram for their dog as well.
Fucking Phoebe.
Sorry, I'm really on the warpath today. Look, again, live and let live.
I'm not live and let live. Like, if you fucking pissed off about people putting homeowner in their bio, you fucking own that, girl.
You know what? Thank you, Lucy. I'm going to own it, because it's just, like there's got to be something more interesting about you than that. And
27, homeowner.
look, my Instagram bio isn't popping. It's quite dry, but I think that there's just something about that. I own a home. Do you?
No, because I'm poor.
No, I can't because it's so expensive and inflation is through the roof. Anyway, yeah, that's the end of that for me. Thank you so much for listening to Shallow. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave us a review. It makes a huge difference in helping others to discover the podcast. We always want to hear from you, so feel free to slide into our DMs or follow us on Instagram @shallowpod, or send us an email at shallow@boxedoff.studio. Shallow is a Boxed Off production, written and hosted by Lucy Bell and Phoebe Whittle. We'll see you next time.